Hello everyone. Today we have Mr. Vipul Notani with us, and Vipul has recently been placed in MathWorks as a part of Engineering Development Group, also called as EDG. And Vipul is also pursuing his master's MTech in Systems and Control Engineering from IIT Bombay, and he will be graduating in this June 2025. Prior to joining IIT Bombay, Vipul has worked for Continental for more than 3 years. So today we will get to know from Vipul about his journey of getting placed in MathWorks and tips and tricks like how one can crack MathWorks recruitment process and so on. So thank you, Vipul. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Sudhakar. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So Vipul, can we talk a bit about this role? Like what is this EDG role? And like what does this mean? What is the job profile and so on?
I mean, in much detail, I can only tell it after I joined the company.
Yeah.
But from the pre-placement talks and all the online references, it's EDG is like you could say 1.5 year exploration program where you get to work on different projects. You can
Yeah.
select different teams where you want to work, different domains. And after 1.5 years working, exploring 2, 3 areas or more, depending on your bandwidth, you can decide which team you want to work with. And
Okay.
there has to be some alignment with the manager as well, with whom you were
Yes.
working. And then if the alignment is there and there is an open position, you can join that particular team based on your
Yes.
interest.
So it's kind of more like a program oriented for freshers only, like the college
Yeah.
freshers. Okay, so they
Yes.
can join MathWorks and then they can explore the teams over there, and then they can finally like become a part of one team finally. So like we can talk about the recruitment process, like what were the various steps involved, as in was there any resume shortlisting, what was the CPI cutoff? Like can you please walk us through the various steps involved in the recruitment process?
The recruitment process was very standard. It started with a pre-placement talk where we were explained about the rules, and there were open questions for us where we could ask if we had any doubts, any clarification regarding the role or any recruitment process as such. And after 2 weeks, we had our written exam. So procedure had 2, 3 steps here. So first was written technical test, and then there were 3 rounds of interviews and the final selection. Then
Okay, so as you mentioned that the first part was pre-placement talk. Okay, then
yeah,
was there any resume shortlisting that you?
I'm not sure about it that if there was they had a particular criteria, but it was mentioned that the cutoff was 7 or 7.5 CGPA.
Oh, okay,
Correct.
okay, okay.
But if there was any further filters they
Yes.
implied there, I'm not sure about those.
Right, right. One cannot get to know that what were the various filters they applied internally, right? But the CPI, there was a
Yeah,
CPI cutoff, which was 7 or 7.5.
yeah,
Okay. So once the students who got shortlisted for the written test, there was a written test for them.
yeah.
Right. So I believe MathWorks conducts written tests for various like tracks, like for various tracks.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So can you
Yeah.
please talk about the written test and what was your track in that written test?
So MathWorks comes for 3 different profiles actually. One is
Okay.
associate engineers, which is for bachelor student. One
Okay.
is just engineer in EDG, which is for masters, and I think it is called senior engineer for the PhD students.
Okay.
So for associates, that is bachelors, there is no particular description or particular set of track specified for the bachelor student. They have a
Oh, okay.
common paper which they will have a mix of signal processing related questions, something related to VLSI, coding, maths, aptitude, everything would be there.
Okay.
So it's same for all the students here in
Okay.
for the bachelors. For
Bachelor's, yeah.
masters, yeah, for masters, we have 5 tracks. One is control systems, one is VLSI, one is signal processing, one is embedded, and I think I'm forgetting one more. Total, there are five
I
tracks.
think one is computer science, I think, computer science.
Probably, I'm not sure about it.
Okay. Yeah.
And out of those, I registered for the controls track.
Control systems. Okay. So that track you have to mention while filling the JAF itself or later.
Yes, we have to mention it while filling the job.
Okay. 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 So you opted for control systems track. Okay.
Yeah.
So what was the various things in that test? Like what was the syllabus means? What were the various components of that written test?
So most of the, I mean, they were MCQ based question and there were two programming questions. Now in
Okay.
MCQ, there were different parts. Started with, I mean, it could be jumbled up for different students. So for me, it started with a classical control theory that we studied in BTech, along with some maths. Maths was mostly linear algebra. And then there were in for programming MCQs, there were three sections again, where you can select any two, if I remember it correctly. So one section was based on C. If you are comfortable with C++, then the MCQs were from C++. There was another section with if someone is comfortable with MATLAB scripts, they can choose to do that particular section. Then there was Python, and I think there was C as well. So out
Okay.
of these four, you have to do any two, if I remember correctly. I'm not sure right now, but yeah, they were the choice out of four or five languages. So yeah, MCQ is based on classical control theory, a little bit of linear algebra, or I would say maths in general,
Maths. Yeah.
some aptitude question. Then MCQ is based on programming,
Programming.
and
Yes.
then lastly there were two programming questions. Like you have to it was a HackerRank based test, and you have to code it there.
Okay. And what was the level of those two coding questions?
You can count it as an intermediate level because
Okay.
everyone got different questions. So some
Yeah.
got easy, some got medium, but nobody got a difficult question, I would say. So based on your preparation depends, like there are different data structures. So if you're comfortable
Yes.
with one, then it's easy for you. Otherwise, it is a little
Right.
difficult. So yeah, hard to
Right.
comment on that.
Given that your background is from systems and control, it's so
Mm.
how did you prepare for coding, or how one should prepare for coding?
So I mean, if you're sitting for placement and one should already have a list of five, six companies that they are
Yeah.
targeting initially.
Right.
And first thing would be to get some idea from your seniors that what kind of programming they are asking, if they are asking, and first
Yeah.
get to know what language they are asking because
Yes.
for MathWorks, Python is not allowed. You have to code it either in C, C++, Java, or JavaScript. So
Yes.
Python is not allowed. So MathWorks was one of the companies in my list, and most of the companies are comfortable with C and C++ as well. So from the beginning, I started working on my C++ there. So
Okay.
C++ gave you an advantage of object-oriented programming as well.
Yes.
So I started
Yes.
with C++, so
Yeah.
I could apply for MathWorks as well as other companies as well. So
Okay.
I was not, looking into two different languages for different companies because that creates a lot of confusion during the exam, syntax
Yes.
wise and other things. So from the beginning, I focused on C++ and I used YouTube videos, HackerRank for solving problems. So yeah,
Okay.
one
Okay.
problem a day, two problem a day.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
be consistent. Yeah.
Okay, regarding the MathWorks coding questions where you have to write the code, so can you give some idea, like not the problem itself, but can you give some idea,
Yeah.
like what one should study? For example, like data structures, classes, or algorithms, STL, and so on. Like any
Yeah.
like high level idea?
So one should be prepared with standard template library because that is
Okay.
going to help you a lot with different kind of questions there.
Yeah.
So for me, I don't remember the question specifically,
Yes.
but one question was related to object-oriented programming. I had to create classes, constructors, and deconstructors there.
Okay.
And the other question was some again a problem statement which could be solved with vectors in C++.
Okay. Okay.
But
So it's more
while
like
in
data structures. You need to know the
yeah,
various data structures,
yeah,
classes, constructor, destructor, and so
yeah.
on. Okay.
So
Okay.
while discussing with others, I think most of the questions were based on vectors and strings. There,
Okay.
I not sure about if
Okay.
someone was asked about linked list or not,
Yes.
but most
Okay.
of the questions were related to vectors or string from data
Okay.
structures
Okay.
point of view.
Got it. Sure. Or any algorithm you like someone was asked or you recollect.
Uh, I think everyone who is not from computer science background should be comfortable with basic algorithms like sorting, and there
Binary
are
search.
different two-pointer
Yeah.
approach and those kind
Two
of things. You
pointed.
should be
Yes. Yeah.
comfortable with those things because these questions won't be direct, that they will not ask you to sort the vector. There will be a problem statement. You have to make sense out of it. And at the back end, these kind of algorithms will be used somehow.
Yes. Right.
So
Right. True.
Questions are not direct,
True.
so you have to make
Right.
sense out of it and convert it into a simpler problem statement.
So that was about the written test. So now what happened after the written test? I believe the students were shortlisted for the interview.
Yeah, so after written test, I think after a month we got a list of shortlisted candidates for the interview
Okay.
round.
Yeah.
And we were already informed that there will be three rounds. One will be HR, managerial, and technical rounds. So all
Okay.
these rounds are conducted in one session itself.
So and that would happen in the month of December. Once the interviews begin,
Yes,
then this
yes,
interview will happen.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
sure. So we can talk about like now these three rounds. Which round
Mhm.
happened first in your case?
So these rounds are random. Could be, I mean, different people got in different order. For me, my first round was HR round.
Okay.
After
Yeah.
that, I had my technical round, and the last one was managerial round.
Okay, so let's go through the sequence in which your interview happened. Like, let's talk first about HR. What happened in that? What was the main focus of that round?
So in HR round, I mean, there are some typical HR questions. I mean, if someone is joining after some year of gap, like they are doing a
Yeah.
master's after a gap, or they have some work experience, then a standard question would be about their gap. Or, I mean, if you have some work experience, then why did you leave your job and got into your
Yes.
master's program? So, I mean, someone should be ready with these kind of standard questions. Then
Yeah.
other things are like they will put you in some situation like how do you deal with people who are not agreeing with you or something while you're working on a project. So these kind of standard questions were asked, nothing out of the box there. But yeah,
Okay.
standard questions that you can answer from your experiences. And
Yes.
even if you, and I mean, it's very open. They tell you that, okay, if you haven't experienced any of such scenario before, you can just say no. They will ask a different question. You don't have to force a scenario, make up a story there. And I wouldn't recommend make up
Right.
a story
Right.
because it's easier to catch for them. I mean, they have a lot of
Yes. Yeah.
experience of interview taking and all.
Yes.
So you can be honest
Okay.
there. Be honest there.
And what was the duration of this round? Half an hour almost.
Yeah, almost 30 to 35 minutes. Yes.
So what happened after this round of interview?
So after HR round, I immediately had my technical round, which
Okay.
was almost 1 hour, 1 hour, 10 minutes kind of thing.
Okay. Let's talk
Uh,
about this. So what
yeah.
happened in this round actually? Like what was the
So I
discussion? Yeah.
would break this in technical round into two halves. So I think
Okay.
almost 30 minutes the interview was focused on control theory, mostly
Okay.
classical controls, and the rest 30 minutes was related to my programming skills. So I
Okay.
started
Yeah.
with control theory.
Yeah.
Actually started with my resume where because I was sitting for controls and my projects were related to controls. So I was asked some questions about the project that I had done related to controls and to gauge my understanding there.
Yeah.
And after they covered 2 or 3 projects, then they started asking their own questions, which were mostly related to classical control theory.
Okay.
And the focus was more on the understanding that how well do you understand the concept.
Yeah.
Like they are not standard question like why do you use Bode plot or why do you use root locus or these kind of things, but how well do you understand these things?
Okay.
So yeah, so it's better to have a understanding that when to use these concepts, how to use these concepts rather than just solving numericals. Numericals
Yes.
will help till the written exams, but understanding of these concepts to the ground level is very important for the interview part.
Okay.
So yeah, classical control theory and state space. That the last, I mean, from if I talk from the BTech perspective, what we studied in our undergraduate, so it is mostly classical control theory and then state space analysis.
State space. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was then most of it was classical control and state skills. So
Right.
nothing
Non-linear control.
non-linear. It was asked to me because of my projects in
Oh, okay.
non-linear domain.
Yeah.
But after the projects were covered, no questions were asked from non-linear control theory.
So
After
anything
that,
which you missed here, like you think that you could have answered better in this round, in this part, controls part.
one thing I felt was that questions were very basic that you wouldn't expect them to ask such questions. And
Okay.
you actually you know the answers as well. But the thing is, while you are explaining, it's I don't know if it happens with others, but I tend to explain things with examples. Like I
Okay.
will take example of a robot. That robot is moving from this position to this. Then how do you? Then I was explaining observability and controllability using that
Okay.
example. But
Mm.
sometimes these examples just stretch, right? So you have
Yes.
to be very precise in giving the answers. I was not prepared with those kind of answers in my head.
Right.
So at one point, I was asked to stick to the proper answers and not, I mean,
Mm.
not like negatively, but
Yeah,
the
of
interviewer
course.
asked me to
Yeah, yeah,
explain this concept, but don't use the example this time.
yeah, yeah. Just to
So
save
in
time
that
also,
case,
like, yeah, it might
yes,
save some
exactly.
time as well. Yeah.
But yeah,
Okay.
and yeah, that's it from the controls theory side of things. It
Yeah.
went really well.
Okay. Okay. So all was a like verbal discussion, and it was online interview,
Yes,
right?
yes.
It was totally
Yeah,
online,
yeah, it was online interview.
and a
Yes.
verbal discussion. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. And then they shifted to programming, I believe, after this part.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
It was basic questions to check the understanding of concepts. And most of the focus was on OOPS, object-oriented
Okay.
programming. First,
Okay.
I was asked which programming language you are comfortable with,
Yes.
and they already have your resumes with them. I had mentioned C++. I had also mentioned MATLAB script there, and Python also. So
Yeah.
then there are some similarities in Python, NumPy library and MATLAB. So they were
Okay.
asking how do you perform this operation in
Oh.
MATLAB and
Oh.
how do you perform the same operation
In
using
Python.
NumPy library.
Okay.
So these questions were asked. This is how it started, and then the
Mm.
focus shifted to object-oriented programming.
Yeah.
Again, what is constructors, deconstructors, and shallow copy, deep copy, these kind of questions. Why do we use those things? So
Okay.
yeah, but I would say most of the focus was on object-oriented programming in this track.
So like, did they ask you to write some code or find the output of some code snippet or?
So I didn't have to write any code, but maybe if I remember correctly, some situation was given that if I want to solve this problem, how will you approach it? So
Okay.
that was like verbally you have to explain it, but I was not asked to write any code there.
So apart from classes, did they ask anything on data structures or maybe pointers or any other programming concepts?
Like data structures, no questions were asked there, if I remember correctly. Pointers, maybe. I mean, again, pointers was involved during the deep copy and shallow copy concepts there.
Yes. Right. Right.
So a little bit of dynamic programming part also.
Okay.
But yeah, no specific algorithm was asked that. Yeah, no standard algorithm was asked. Yeah.
So this also have like lasted for almost 30 minutes, 30, 40 minutes.
So yeah, coding related things lasted for 30-35 minutes. Yeah.
So anything you missed in this like part or you think you could have done better?
So here these concepts like deep copy and shallow copy, I knew theoretically what these things are. And I also
Yeah.
mentioned that I know these concepts, but I never got to use it in my project. So I
Okay.
don't have a practical understanding like, okay, I know what these things are, why we need to
Mm.
use it, but I have never used it before. So I lack a little bit there. Like once, I mean, for me, if I implement something, then I have better clarity about those things, those concepts. So I
Yeah.
lacked there, but I was comfortable in explaining theoretically what these things are. And I
Okay.
also
Okay.
conveyed the same during answering while I was
Yeah.
answering these questions that I've never implemented these things, but I know what these things are.
From your like batchmates, like do you know like they were asked something, some other things also, or it more or less? Do you have any idea on that? What were they asked?
So one of my friend, he had experience in C programming. So C does not
Okay.
have the concept of hoops there. So
Yes.
so they were also comfortable there, and they just asked questions related to C. They didn't go to classes and objects there. So
Okay.
I mean, it is not, as long as you know your stuff,
Yes.
you can just tell them, be honest there, don't lie that I know this. Just
Right.
tell them that, okay, I haven't worked on these particular things, and they will stick to the question that you have worked on and gauge your knowledge from those particular areas. So
Right.
yeah, he worked on C, so his interview was based on C.
Yes. Of course. Okay. And after this round of interview, there was the final round, which was managerial round after this
Managerial.
technical
Yeah.
round.
Yeah.
Okay. What happened in that round?
So managerial round was also similar to HR round. Like some questions was very similar.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
just I think around to understand how well you will mix up with the team, and
Okay.
just to know you better, like how what you, other than your technical expertise or technical skills, what else you're bringing to the team, how well you handle situation of pressure, and I would say similar HR questions, but different questions. Like one can prepare for both the rounds in the same way.
Okay.
Again, be
Okay.
honest there. It is
Of
easy for
course.
them to
Of course.
catch
Right.
you.
Right. So these were the three rounds, and then finally offers were released for those who
Yeah.
got selected. Do you want to add something else apart from this?
When students are preparing for these placements exam, again, like I mentioned already, have a list of 7, 8 companies depending on your
Yes.
department. Maybe you have 10 or 20 companies as well. Controls, there are limited options. So have a list there that what you are targeting and prepare accordingly. And it is one thing to solve numericals in for the
Yes.
written exam, but you also have to be prepared about your interviews. So
Right.
because these things are once you enter that particular placement season, you are so packed up with written exams and interviews. So in some colleges, it is happening parallelly.
Yes.
So yeah, just be prepared about the concepts, what these things are from the root level. Those things don't help you in the written exam, but they are very important for
True. And
interviews.
true. Yeah.
Okay. And if you have written something in your resume, you should know
Yes.
about it
Yes.
because
Yeah.
if the question is
Yes.
asked and you are not able to explain it to them,
True.
then it's not a good impression there.
Yeah.
So whatever you have mentioned in your resume, be clear about it. Don't lie in the resume. It is easy to
Yes.
catch. So yeah, that's it. Stay
Right.
consistent
Right.
with your preparation.
Yes. Sure, Vipul. Thank you so much for sharing your experience, and it was nice knowing that, like, how did you prepare for placements? And of course, your journey will inspire the incoming students or your juniors, those who are aspiring to join masters at some or the other IITs. So, of course, your journey will help them. It will be like a guide for them. So, thank you so much for sharing your experience with us.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my experience.